Hello friend. I want to tell you about the Mazda CX-5 car. The Mazda CX-5 is a classic compact SUV, a competitor to the Volkswagen Tiguan, Toyota RAV4 or Kia Sportage. It has a body of just over 4.5 meters, offering typical space inside for this segment and a trunk with a capacity of 506 liters. This is a good car for people who value simplicity. The cabin does not have as many modern solutions as the competition. The multimedia screen is small, and everything is controlled by buttons and knobs. Even the multimedia. The seats are not the most comfortable, but it is hard to have any reservations about the position behind the steering wheel. There is enough space in the back, but competitors offer more. One can complain about the irregularly shaped boot or the lack of hooks for shopping. The interior finish is good, as is the sound system. It's rather average in its league, which doesn't impress with anything, but overall it's good, and many drivers are simply delighted. The CX-5 drives well, or rather correctly, and also offers four-wheel drive, which will work best on slippery surfaces rather than off-road. The car has absolutely no aspirations to overcome off-road terrain, although an off-road driving mode has been introduced for 2023. Of the shortcomings mentioned by users, the biggest is the poor soundproofing of the cabin, although in practice it is not the worst. Technique. The design of the car is as simple as its reception by customers, and what's more, the floor pan is only a slightly modernized design of its predecessor. As is the entire car, which from a technical point of view is a kind of facelift of the first generation, not a new car. The chassis is equipped with suspension based on McPherson struts and a multi-link rear axle. Adaptive shock absorbers, like some competitors, are not used. Four-wheel drive is optional. It is implemented by an electronically controlled multi-plate clutch. The steering system is electrically assisted. Engines. The car was equipped in Europe with 3 engines, although due to changes in years, power and drive variants, there were 20 versions in total. Nevertheless, the basis is a 2.0 petrol with 4 cylinders and no supercharging. Only in the first 2 years of production it had 160 HP, from 2018 already 165 HP. The petrol engine offer was complemented by a 2.5-liter engine, also a 4-cylinder without supercharging. Always with 194 HP. Both petrol units from the 2023 model year are equipped with the Mazda M hybrid system, a mild hybrid on a 24-volt architecture. Additionally, the 2-liter unit with a manual and 2.5-liter with each gearbox have a system for disconnecting 2 cylinders from operation. Diesel engines are actually one unit in 3 power versions: 150 HP, 175 HP and 184 HP. From the beginning of production, 2 weaker ones were offered. Only in the first 2 years was the 175 HP engine available, and from 2028 already with 184 HP. The weakest version was on offer throughout the entire production period. It may be interesting to note that the 2.2 Skyactiv D diesel engine was criticized for not having an SCR system for reducing nitrogen oxides. It was also offered in the United States. Mazda, somewhat under pressure from other manufacturers, installed an SCR system in units meeting the Euro 6D temp standard, but not because it had to do so for technical reasons. The Mazda CX-5 used both front-wheel drive and AWD, as well as manual and automatic transmissions. With a few exceptions, each engine was configured with each of these solutions. Only the 160 horsepower petrol always had 4-wheel drive. Much depended on the year. Which engine should I choose? The Mazda CX-5 is a very specific car in that it does not encourage very dynamic driving, so in practice each drive variant is good, although of course the more powerful ones are more pleasant to drive. However, you shouldn't expect miracles from the most powerful version, the 2.5. Despite its 194 HP, the engine behaves like modern 1.5 turbo engines. Only in terms of elasticity does it beat them all, because it feels great at extremely low revs and doesn't weaken until the red zone. Petrol units do not burn large amounts of fuel, but they are also not as economical as smaller, supercharged ones. If you drive skillfully, You can get down to 7 to 9 100 kilometers in mixed use, while dynamic driving will not exceed 11 100 kilometers anyway. Diesels are subjectively more dynamic, although the 150 horsepower variant does not differ significantly from the most powerful one. Fluidity, flexibility, peace, harmony, low fuel consumption. These are the features of Mazda engines from the Skyactiv family. Diesels do not burn significantly less, on average about 7 100 kilometers. Typical faults. The petrol units are taken from the predecessor and subject to very subtle changes, mainly to meet emission standards, including CO2, although Mazda did not have to do much here either. It is worth noting right away that all versions of the second-generation CX-5 meet at least the Euro 6 standard. Petrol engines are very durable and rarely break down. They have a chain-driven timing belt, which does not need to be touched for long runs. Despite direct injection, there is nothing wrong with the fuel system. A typical fault for Skyactiv G engines is ignition coil failure. The original coil costs about $150, while the replacement costs 2 to 3 times less. However, there are 4 of these elements, so if you want to replace the whole set, the cost of the entire operation will be high. One of the changes dictated by ecological requirements is the electronically controlled thermostat, the mechanism of which is damaged. Fortunately, it usually locks in the open position for large circulation, so the engine does not overheat, but it may not heat up. The 2.2 Skyactiv D diesel engines have been improved in the second generation and no longer have a problem with camshafts or shaft bearings seizing. Just like petrol engines, diesels have received a solid timing chain. Despite the low failure rate of these engines, you have to be aware that they are not cheap to repair. If you intend to buy a car with higher mileage, it is worth checking it out carefully, and even opting for a petrol version instead. There are no surprises in the drivetrain. Automatics and manual gearboxes are durable, and the four-wheel drive is trouble-free, although it is worth remembering to change the oil in all mechanisms, including the bevel gear, which may start to make noise after a longer mileage on old oil. There is no problem with servicing and repairing the suspension. Both entire elements and individual silent blocks are available, which can be purchased as replacements. Overall, the suspension is durable. There is a lot of talk about the low corrosion resistance of Mazda cars, but this problem does not apply to the car in question. The CX-5 too has a thin, delicate paint, but even chipping does not cause a corrosive coating to form in those places after a while. Of course, this does not mean good anti-corrosion protection of the chassis, which is better done soon after purchase if you intend to drive the car for a long time. The most susceptible to rust are the suspension mounting points and subframes. Interestingly, the actuators of the electrically raised boot lid also rust. In general, this mechanism is quite unreliable. The folding mechanism of the exterior mirrors is also faulty. Thanks for listening to me. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and rate my video. If you know any problems with this car that I didn't mention, be sure to write about them in the comments.